Hello, my name is Lucas. This is a Bit of Lit, and I'm here to discuss Broken Stars, edited and translated by Ken Liu. This is 16 stories from the new frontiers of Chinese science fiction, and it is wonderful. There are a lot of excellent stories in here, a few that didn't do anything for me, but largely because they are so steeped in Chinese culture. While I am aware of some of these things, are just still out of my zone, but that's not too many of them. You will be able to understand these stories perfectly fine. This was published in 2019, and it's great because there's actually some essays at the back as well. One of them tells you about the history of Chinese science fiction. I would like to give you the bare bones of what that does. There's more information in the essay, but it starts in 450 BC, roughly, to 375 BC, somewhere around there. And there is a Taoist classic, from what this says, called Lietzi. And in there's a story called Yanshi, and Yanshi is a mechanic that builds an automaton that resembles a human. So I don't know more beyond that. It just mentioned that story. It didn't explain exactly what happens in it, but during the Qing dynasty, it became the modern science fiction as it's known in China was sort of introduced, and translations of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells and all this other stuff, translated works were coming in, and intellectuals and authors like Liu Cixin and Liang Qichao were recommending it for the betterment of the country. Fast forward through tons of wars. I mean, we skipped thousands of years already, so why not? And, by the time China becomes the People's Republic of China, eventually Mao Zedong has the policy, the Cultural Revolution, and it kind of goes away because nobody's writing anything, because it's a terrible time, a difficult time, and nobody wants to get in trouble and have anything that could possibly be resembling Western culture of any kind, because that would be not good for people at the time. But after that, in the late 70s to early 80s, lots of sci-fi magazines started popping up. One of them being Scientific and Literary, which is now called, what is it called? Science Fiction World. It's the only one from that time period that has lasted, from what this says. And in 1986, Science Fiction World and Wisdom Tree created the Galaxy Award to celebrate great Chinese science fiction. And that was a particular process where basically only Chinese science fiction could be, from these magazines and what have you, could be voted on. But in 2010, the Chinese Nebula Awards, that could be open to more authors, I suppose. It's a little confusing to me. Was created by the World Chinese Science Fiction Association. And that's that. That is the history of it. A little bit. I mean, I skipped over a lot of details. And there are some really great stories in here. I'm going to highlight some of my favorite ones. Liu Cixin's Moonlight, which is a story about a man who gets a call from himself, from the future, and his future self warns him that the world is going to face a climate crisis beyond what we could imagine. here, I'm going to send you an email. Here are the schematics for creating a machine that will uh, protect the world from that happening. And the person in the present is like, okay, I'll find a way to popularize this. And he does, and it actually makes the future worse. And then they keep trying again and again. And it is a really interesting story about the power one man has, or how futile it is to believe that you have the power to change things for the better. I don't know. It feels quite cynical. Read it for yourself. I recommend it. I think it's a really great story. And yeah, there's another aspect to it about the Moonlight that I think, I really enjoyed that story. I sort of oversimplified it a little bit, but it is really fun. There are quite a few others. I also really, really enjoyed Baoshu. I'm not entirely sure how to say his name. He actually wrote a fan fiction that became published for Liu Cixin's Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy with Three Body Problem, Dark Forest, and Death's End. And I believe that is called The Redemption of Time. And I keep seeing it. I think, I want to get it just to try because I've read the other three. And I did like them when I first read them. But then I realized there's some things I like. I have mixed feelings about those books. But yeah, I would consider it. I'm not going to buy books for a while. But What Has Passed Shall in Kinder Light Appear is a fantastic story about people living their lives through time going forward, but the cultural events and history basically is marching backwards. And it goes through roughly, I think, 2012 to the time of Chinese occupation, and that was in the 30s, maybe even in the 20s. I don't know for sure. I think it was started in the 30s. So, the years aren't going. It's not like, okay, it's 2012. Now it's 2011. Now it's 2010. Now it's 2009. I don't think that's the way it is. I think he's born in 2012. And then, in 2016, it's hard to explain, but everything is happening backwards, even though he's getting older. And it goes through all the events and all the world leaders for China and all the troubling times that China's had. And there's this great conversation when Jean-Paul Sartre was in China in a while, where the main character, who is a science fiction writer who had to stop writing science fiction because of the Cultural Revolution, as we discussed, about time and the absurd and all these different kinds of things. It is. I'm not doing it justice, man. It's hard to explain, but when you read it, I think you will see that it's actually excellent. Let's see. Oh, there's so many that I liked. The most fun one by far is Ma Boyong's. Sorry, I don't know for sure how to say this person's name. The First Emperor's Games is the first emperor of China wants to play video games, and he has all these different counselors and video game developers introduce games to him, and they're introduced through the lens of certain philosophical ideas that have been important in Chinese history, legalism and Confucianism and these kind of things. And the games are related to those fundamental ideas in some way, and the emperor gets more and more frustrated with each and every game for different reasons because he's an egomaniac and thinks that even characters in a video game should bow to him and be grateful to him for being in his empire. I really like that story. Regina Kanyu Wang, she wrote a story called The Brain Box, and that is also excellent because it is this really strange story where, you know, it's kind of like a black box in your brain, and this person has died in a plane crash, and the lover of this person is able to hear the final thoughts. And they are not what you expect. And it's great. And all the other stories are good too. It's just some of them are fine. They didn't tickle me the same way that these did. I think you'll enjoy every story. But there are one or two, I think I already said this, one or two that are like so deeply steeped in Chinese culture that as someone, I have a little bit of knowledge, having lived here for years, but if you are very unfamiliar, you'll have it will be almost incomprehensible in some ways. But nonetheless, Chen Qiufan, I think that's how you say it, A History of Future Illnesses, which is, there's some things I don't like about the story, but overall I really enjoy how creative it is. It's somebody explaining illnesses in the future and the way that this writer sort of extrapolates and thinks about future illnesses and how they come about, and you know, how they dissipate, and all these kind of things is really very clever and very fun, and I enjoy it. So yeah, that is Broken Stars, edited and translated by Ken Liu. He's got another translation thing like this called Invisible Skies. I look forward to reading that at some point. So yeah, thank you. Goodbye.